Hey guys, StalkingJaeger here. I just want to say thank you. Seriously, because I started this channel and I didn't think... I was excited when I got 5 views, guys. Seriously, I only did this because I've always loved creepypastas. So, we've hit 100 subscribers in such a short amount of time, and I thank you guys. Seriously. So enjoy this compilation. I'm working on so many projects right now, and I know you guys are gonna love them. I've brought in somebody to do a voice acting part in one of my newest videos, or one of my newer videos that are gonna come out, and I know you guys are gonna love it because he's my brother. So yeah, thanks guys. Enjoy the video. He comes with a scale, and we play a game for my life by Isopeth. Knock, knock, knock. Always 3 knocks on the door. Assertive knocks, not too strong, but enough to be heard. He doesn't have a favourite time. Doesn't wait until I'm doing something specific. Under sunny weather or torrential rain, when it's hot or cold, he just comes. Knock, knock, knock. He's patient, and knows that I'm not. He knows I'll let him in eventually. Knock, knock, knock. Might as well get it over with. My palms are sweating, heart pounding, and with weak legs, I get up. Knock, knock, knock. I open the door. There he is again, a tall figure, swathed in black, with a hood over his head, 2 shining blue orbs, and a grin of skull. Hello, my friend. Long time no see, he says in a warm voice, with an otherworldly tone to it, low and deep, and so infatuating. I feel no fear of his features, that's not the problem. I stand there, legs shaking and trying to tell him to go away, but he lets himself in. It's been a long time since our last game, hasn't it? I hope you have not forgotten your old pal. Always so jolly, full of conviction, persuasive. He sets a scale on the table and a set of rusty weights by its side, organizes them meticulously by weight, and he calls me, "Come on, you know how this works," and gives a hearty laugh. I can't help but chuckle with him. I give 1, 2 hesitant steps to the table, and a quick glance at the door, but running doesn't help. I could go away, but he would still be here when I returned. I've changed houses, but he always finds my new place. I could seek the help of friends, but that doesn't help forever. I resign myself, look back at the table and sit down. Somehow his grin widens. He has a look of approval and reaches for the set of weights. Look at this new beauty I've acquired. 30 kilograms. Beautiful, is it not? I nod and tell him it's impressive. I'm always cordial to him, and he's always cordial to me. He sets it on his side of the scale. It winds on its hinges, all rusty, and he looks at me. Do you think you can beat it this time, friend? I pick up one of his weights, 1 kilogram, and set it on the scale. This is the great soup I had today. Had all my favourite ingredients. Was it that good? Very well, he says. What else have you got? I pick up a 5 kilogram weight. This one represents my dog. He is a very good boy, isn't he? He gives my dog a scratch on the head. What else? I'm starting to sweat. These 2 are always my openers. After that, the real struggle begins. My mind is racing. I pick up a 10 kilo weight. This one represents my work this week. 10 kilos? He says. You know it was not that good. There were holes all over it. He's right. Always so persuasive, strong, compelling. How I hate him for that. It was worth 5 kilograms at most. Do you agree with me, don't you? He looks at me grinning, always with that smile. I nod and put the 5 kilogram weight on the scale. I judge my next move with care. I pick up a 2 kilogram weight. This represents my dreams, I say. He looks at it, contemplating for a while. Fair, he finally utters. I sigh with relief. I think hard what else to put at the scale. I reach for the 20 kilogram weight, He looks at me with a quizzical look. With a shaky voice I say, "This one represents my friends." He looks at me in silence. His grin widens and he lets out a hearty laugh. He laughs and laughs, bringing rage from inside me. And fear. He finally composes himself. 20 kilograms, he says between chuckles. You know for sure that is not true. His grin's wide. Where do I begin? When was the last time they invited you for something? I look at my shoes. When was the last time they asked if you're fine? I keep my gaze firm at the ground. How do you know they really like you? Tears dance on my eyes. That's right, friend. Even you know that is an overestimation. You're not that important. You're a peripheral. They put up with you. They laugh at my jokes, I say. They laugh at a joke, that's for sure. He grins at me. They've said I'm important to them, I say with tears running down. Sure you are. But is it because they enjoy you? Or because they think you are useful? They put up with you because you're so easy to use. And he gives another laugh. I agree with him. So persuasive, strong, realistic. It's not true, I say with a shaky voice. You know it is. I don't lie, friend. Let's knock that weight down, shall we? 8 kilograms seems fair to me. No, I shout at him. That's unfair. He considers, looks at me and says, very well. Maybe 10 kilograms is more fair. He grins at me. What else? What else, indeed? I start shaking, and it feels so cold. Even at midday. Something, anything to set on that scale. I pick up a 5 kilogram weight. This represents my house, I say. He cocks his head and gives me a weird look. Your house? This place? No. That's not a valid bet. It is filthy, he says. I nod. He's right. Then it represents my garden, I say. Your garden, he says with a chuckle. What, you find weeds beautiful now? No. I force myself to think. Anything, goddammit. My book! I spit out the words. I need to finish it. True, he says. But 5 kilograms? That's too much. A 1 kilogram seems fair to me. I nod and set 1 kilogram at the bounce. What else? 6 kilograms left to go. I just need more reasons. I can do this. Please, I know I can. I pick up a 1 kilogram weight. This one represents my anger. Yes, but is it fair? Anger at what? Yourself? Your own choices? That is not a valid one. You're starting to make me think you don't have anything else to set on that scale, friend. I do have more reasons. I just need to think. My heart is pounding hard. I'm desperate now. And suddenly, I remember. I pick up a 20 kilogram weight. My parents. He looks at me and shakes his head. 20 kilograms? No. You're far from perfect. They might love you, but you fail too much. You're not like the other people, and they know it. You didn't bring joy like the other kids, nor pride on your adulthood. That is barely worth a 5. I sag in my chair, look at the weight and at him, and I nod. What else, friend? There is nothing else. I don't know. I can't put anything else on that scale. Nothing matters to me anymore. My eyes fill with tears. I feel hollow inside. Is that it? Nothing else to bet? His eyes are so much more bright now. Do you accept that you lost? He asks. I shake my head. He sighs. You know there is nothing left. Come on, admit that you lost. He gets up from the chair and walks around me. Just give up. Give me a hug and let it go. It is going to be so much easier. He's right. It would be so easy. The pain would end, he would win, and I wouldn't need to do this again. He is right. He is cunning. He is persuasive. I start getting up. Maybe that's it. Just give him a hug and end this once and for all. He won, you lost. There's peace in that. He opens his arms, expecting a hug. It looks so inviting. His grin is wide and his eyes burn with intensity. I take a step towards him. His grin widens even more somehow. No, I say. There's one more thing.
And what is that, friend?
Trust. The one people have in me. That I'll do the right thing. I pick up a 2-kilogram weight and set it on the scale. He looks at me and back at the scale. I hold my breath and close my eyes. Silence dominates the house.
Fair,
he says. I gasp for air and open my eyes. He walks to the table in silence and starts gathering his things.
Congratulations. You win one more round,
he says cheerfully. I stare at him. He walks to the door and opens it.
That was a close one. I hope you find some more reasons.
He looks back at me, the wide grin and flickering eyes.
But be sure of this. I'll get you one day, friend.
He walks out and closes the door. I look blankly at the door, and for a brief moment I have a feeling that if he wins this twisted game, my death will follow shortly, and not by his hand. I won't let you. I set out my chair and sigh. I just wanted to go home. By Synaptic Nerve. I've been walking home after a late shift with my head down, and that post-work days where all you can really think of is eating some food and vegging out, when I met her. "Oh, there you are, babe." I turn around to see a pretty young woman rushing towards me, arms wide open. I stumbled back as she wrapped herself around me, my hands still stuffed in my jacket pockets. "Please help me. Someone's following me," she whispered, looking up at me with panic in her eyes. I glanced behind her and saw a silhouette approach, then paused just before they entered the glow of a streetlight. "Yeah," I murmured, staring straight at the person to let them know I could see them. I hoped this would be enough to turn them away, but they remained motionless. "Will you walk me to my place? It's not far, I promise," she asked. "Yeah, of course." I didn't like turning my back on her pursuer. As we walked, I strained my ears to listen for approaching footsteps. Every so often I glanced back, unnerved to see them each time, always avoiding the light and standing in the shadows, still and silent. "Are they still there?" She tugged at my sleeve. "Yeah, they are. Listen, I don't know if we should walk straight to your place. Then they'll know where you live," I said, stealing another glance behind us. "We should try lose them somehow." She looked up at me, and I watched her cycle through expressions as she tried to decide if I was trustworthy. "We can go to a place with more people around," I added, hoping I hadn't alarmed her. "Look, there's a diner a few streets over. We can sit down, wait a while, make sure the coast is clear before you leave. You hungry?" "No, but that's fine with me. It's freezing out here," she replied after a few moments. We crossed the street at the next intersection. I looked back to see the figure still standing on the other side, watching as we disappeared around a corner. I quickened the pace, practically dragging her along. Once we made it inside the relative safety of the diner, I picked us a booth away from the windows, but at an angle that I would be able to see if anyone walked by. After our waitress dropped off our menus and glasses of water, my new acquaintance appeared to relax a bit, though her hands were still so shaky that she had to use both of them to sip her water. We sat in silence, and I kept my eyes on the window. "I'm really sorry I ruined your night," she blurted after a while. I panicked. No, not at all. Totally fine. I'm glad you said something. That was definitely sketchy," I assured her. She looked down at the table, and we went back to uncomfortable silence. Not wanting to keep her from getting home, I eventually came up with a suggestion. "Look, I could call you a cab or something, get you a ride home. That way, that creep won't be able to follow you." She didn't look up and address the table. Her response took me aback. "I don't know if it would even matter." "What do you mean?" She sighed, bringing her hands to her face and rubbing her eyes. "It'll still be out there somewhere." "It?" She spread her fingers open, peering at me from behind them. "Yes, it, them, I don't know anymore." "Okay, look, how about you fill me in on exactly what's going on here?" I snapped. She dropped her hands, her lip quivered like she was fighting back tears. I softened my expression and apologized, but she waved it off. They were really far away when it started. Far enough that I didn't think much of it. Just someone in the corner of my eye, really. At first I thought I was just imagining things. It took a while for me to realise that I was being stalked. I narrowed my eyes at her, wondering just what I'd gotten myself involved with. It just kept getting closer, she continued. It got so close I could almost see it clearly. And I knew it wasn't right. The situation was taking a turn I hadn't anticipated. There was no denying that something appeared to be following her, but the rest of the story made me question her lucidity. I chose my next words carefully. Why don't you tell me what you think you saw, and I'll try and help you. And if I can't, I'll find someone that can. She pulled back instantly, regarding me suspiciously. I'm not crazy. I know what I saw, she replied sharply. All I'm saying is that your eyes can play tricks on you when you're afraid, I countered. No, it wasn't human. It was like it was the absence of a person. Like where someone should have been, there was just no one. I was so scared, and I knew it couldn't be real. But then, you saw it too. I did see someone, that part is accurate. But I didn't see anything that made me think that they were... I trailed off as something caught my peripherals. Outside the window there had been a nearly imperceptible movement. But as I squinted toward it, I could make out the vague outline of a figure in the alley across the street. She followed my gaze, twisting in her seat. It's there, isn't it? She breathed. I nodded, gritting my teeth. Wait here, I said, rising from the booth. No, don't go out there, she exclaimed, her eyes wide. I ignored her and pushed through the door, adrenaline pumping through me. Hey, I can see you, I called, entering the road, my knuckles curling. The silhouette stood its ground. I was nearly across the road when headlights approached, washing over me just before the vehicle swerved out of the way. Get out the road, asshole, the driver yelled out the window before blaring the horn and speeding away. In those few moments, her stalker had managed to disappear from sight. I scanned the darkened alley, moving forward cautiously, expecting them to leap out at me at any second. But there was no one there, and there was no one on the sidewalk either. For the first time that night, I felt genuine fear. I hustled back to the diner, this time checking for traffic first. As I approached the door, I found the booth sitting empty. A wad of crumpled bills sat on the edge of the table. Cursing, I searched the street for any sign of her, to no avail. It had been an unsettling sight, and by then I was completely baffled. What exactly had happened? I forced myself to slow down and assess things logically. I didn't really know what to think. I could almost have written it off as antics of a very paranoid woman, except for the fact that there had definitely been somebody in the alley. And it did appear that they had been following her. Then I realized that I had never gotten a name. She hadn't asked mine and I hadn't asked hers. This seemed odd to me, considering the bizarre interaction we had just shared. Was this some kind of elaborate con? Had she been working with someone else to distract me? My mind went back to how off guard I'd been when she embraced me, and I felt for my wallet. It was still there and everything was still inside, so she hadn't robbed me. Still, the whole thing didn't sit right with me. I couldn't let it go, so I decided to wander the streets in hopes that I'd catch sight of her again. I pulled my hood tight and headed back in the direction we had come from, still trying to piece the puzzle this evening together as I trudged along. I hadn't been walking for a very long time when I saw a group of friends smoking outside of a pub. Hey, excuse me, I greeted them as I approached. You didn't happen to see a friend of mine go by? I've been trying to think of the best way to describe her, but the group ignored my presence entirely and continued to joke among themselves. Excuse me, sorry to bother you all, I tried again. But I'm looking for someone who... There was a murmured agreement that they should head back inside, that it was too cold to stand out there any longer. And with that they filed back inside without so much as a glance in my direction. Everything about this evening had been off, but this was unbelievable. There was just no reason for an entire group of people to pretend I didn't exist. Or was there? It was the absence of a person. I froze, her words entering my brain suddenly. But that was preposterous, wasn't it? I peered at my reflection in the pub window, certain of my existence, but now I was overcome with the need to get someone to acknowledge me. I reached for the pub door. I could feel it on my hand, but it wouldn't budge. I pushed and pulled, but the door wouldn't open from either direction. I'd have thought it was locked if I hadn't seen it swing open just seconds before. It was then that I knew something was wrong. Whatever this world is, whatever plane of existence I had come from, I quickly realized that I was not a part of it anymore. No one could see me, no one could feel me, no one could hear me, and I could no longer interact with any physical objects that I hadn't already been carrying. As the early morning sun began to rise, I was still desperately trying to get anyone's attention. For all my efforts, I was awarded nothing. The most I was able to do was get trapped in my building's stairwell after trying to follow a neighbour inside. To my dismay, I didn't caught up with them before the door at the top of the stairs swung shut. and I was forced to wait there until another neighbour came down the steps on their way to work. Being outside was better. Even if I could still feel the whipping wind, at least out there I couldn't get stuck anywhere. For the first few days I felt hunger and thirst, but the longer I stayed, the less I felt. Eventually I grew numb to these sensations. Even the stinging cold became bearable. Gradually, I came to accept my fate, however cruel, however impossible it all seemed. It'd probably been weeks, but then I'd lost all sense of time, when I met another like me. I'd been sitting in the frozen park late at night, trying to remember what it was like to be real. I didn't react to the shadow that loomed in front of me, expecting it to belong to yet another person who couldn't see me. It was only when it halted that I bothered to look up. They were much like the silhouette I'd seen on that fateful night, and my breath caught as I tried to find a face that wasn't there. Something darker than total blackness stared back at me, and I wondered if I appeared the same way to them. "Do you see me?" I tried asking.
Yes.
I nearly choked searching for words, trying to figure out what question to ask next. What happened to us? The figure gave a dry laugh.
Seems we're dead, doesn't it?
I crossed my mind a few times, but hearing someone else say it was worse. Only then did it feel real. "But how?" I cried. The stranger snorted.
You mean you don't remember how you died?
"No. Do you?"
Yeah, got lured here, just like you.
"What do you mean?" The figure gave a long sigh before sitting beside me on the bench.
Haven't been like this long, have you?
I shook my head.
Well, here's how it works. As you might have noticed, most people can't see you, and you can't do a thing to make them. There are a couple of exceptions. That's really rare to come across.
"What are the exceptions?"
Well, there are the gifted types,
it said, pointing a non-finger to the middle of where their forehead would have been.
And then there are folks who are on their way here.
On the way here? Like, dead?
Precisely.
I processed this information for a while, trying to think back to the night I'd disappeared. She'd been able to see the dark figure, and so had I. I drew a sharp breath, the revelation slowly dawning on me. The car. It must have hit me when...
Not quite,
the stranger interjected.
You never actually died. Whoever took your place managed to swap places with you right before you would have. Right place, right time. Nearly impossible without the help of someone living.
So she tricked me, I scoffed, incredulous. But why would she do that to me?
Who knows, eh? People do crazy things for all sorts of reasons, you know. Point is, don't bother dwelling on reasons here. They don't matter much. Good luck finding your way back. Not many of us ever do.
With that, the absence of a person strode away, leaving me to come to grips with what I'd been told. I knew I'd never find her again, whoever she was, whatever she wanted. It didn't matter. She'd gotten what she needed, and she was long gone. It took some time, but I learned that I had to accept that. I learned that I had to let it go. It seemed the only way I'd ever make it back was to remain vigilant, to notice anyone who gave me the slightest glance. So I wandered, aimless, directionless. For how long I can't say. Time doesn't really seem to matter as much here. You kind of forget about it after a while. All I can say is that one day, my efforts paid off. One day I found my ticket back, after searching for so long. So I thank you, my friend, for the opportunity. I hope that you find your way back someday. I found a strange medical textbook washed up on a beach. Not sure what to make of it. By Old Man River 1. Hey all, I was walking my dog, see photo for the little cutie, today at the beach near my house when I saw a book wrapped in some sort of plastic-like material, sticking out the sand/mud. It's technically a salt marsh, but it's basically a beach at high tide. Low tide, it gets muddy. It unwrapped pretty easily and is in like shockingly good condition considering it's a book that I found sort of in the ocean. But that's not the confusing part. What confuses me is that it's a medical book filled with diseases and animals that I'm fairly certain don't exist. I googled a few of them and I got bupkis. It seems pretty official, it's bound really well, and clearly from a while ago, so it seems unlikely that it's either some weird craft project or a modern one-off gag book or something, I don't know. I'll admit, it's kind of freaking me out. It just seems so real. Here's a few photos of it and an x-ray I found stuffed between one of the pages. One of the listed diseases, I think the x-ray must be related. Parascaphism is an often fatal illness caused by the adolescent marionette octopus, a small parasitic octopus found exclusively in temperate climates, with the highest concentration being off the coast of Massachusetts in the northeast United States Atlantic Ocean. Unknown prior to the wreck, it is believed to have spread during, but data thus far is inconclusive. The octopus finds a host through either the consumption of unclean drinking water or the washing of infected ocean water into the sinus or ears. Given its small size of 1 to 2 millimeters, it can easily be mistaken for a large grain of sand and accidentally ingested. Once inside the body, it travels along the olfactory nerve if in the sinuses/throat, or the inner ear canal if in the ear. From there, it burrows into the brain tissue until it reaches the hypothalamus. While certainly painful for the host, it's generally reported as no more painful than a sinus infection, as it is often mistaken for one. How the octopus knows where to burrow is currently unknown. After it reaches the hypothalamus, it begins excreting high concentrations of both ghrelin, inducing a constant state of hunger in the host, and a unique protein that mimics the host's own tissue, preventing an immune response. The octopus also produces an anti-nausea neuroleptic-like chemical to prevent the host from vomiting, encouraging even more rapid eating. The metabolism of the host reduces sharply following an infection, and weight gain is typically substantial. The tongue and throat are frequently calloused and white. The jaw may swell, and the stomach distends. Speech is difficult. Because the octopus floods the brain with potent dopamine analogues, friends and family concerned about this strange behavior are met with extreme resistance from the host, and thus self-isolating is not uncommon, nor is violence. The high mortality rate is, surprisingly, unrelated to patient resistance, however, and instead the inability to kill the octopus while leaving the host unharmed. As the octopus grows, its arms spread and push through the brain. Should the octopus die at any stage beyond its initial journey into the brain, the comprehensive integration of the octopus within the brain's structure quickly leads to tissue necrosis and death. Attempts have been made to surgically remove the octopus, but have all been unsuccessful. The octopus creates a suction-like hold on wherever the arms grow, and external movement of the arms results in immediate and massive hemorrhaging. As the host body begins to deteriorate from the near constant and extreme caloric intake, post-mortem examinations almost always indicate a near-complete destruction of liver and pancreatic tissue. The host will seek relief in the ocean. Reasons given by the host for traveling to the ocean vary. Interviews with infected patients are inconsistent, but the sense of impending doom should they stay on the land is universal. Consequently, attempts to restrain and prevent a host from fleeing should always be considered with extreme caution. As to the host, it is literally life or death. Chemically, it's not fully understood how the octopus is able to manipulate the host in this way. What is understood is that the octopus uses adrenaline in large quantities to cause the fight or flight response and state of increased agitation. It is able to shift the chemical response to hydration of the host, convincing them to seek water. It will raise the body temperature of the host to near fatal levels, forcing the host to find a method to cool themselves. But despite all these known chemical manipulations, how it causes the extreme fixation on ocean water specifically is very much still a mystery. When the host reaches an ocean body, they will use the last of their energy to swim out to no less than a mile from shore. Once a sufficient distance is reached, we can only assume the octopus is able to detect the difference between deep versus shallow ocean water. The host will lay face down in the water until they drown. The now adult octopus will exit through the nose and re-enter through the belly button, splitting itself in two. While one half initially withers and shrinks dramatically, this decline is quickly reversed and the two halves rapidly grow into two separate and distinct full-sized adult octopods. Note, interestingly, the adolescent marionette octopus has two separate genomes, one being inactive throughout most of its life. When it physically splits, one half activates the second genome and deactivates the first set. Its initial shrinkage is believed to be from the repair needed after this activation. After reaching their full size, the two octopods mate and typically lay hundreds of thousands of eggs within the body cavity, each egg having up to 50 viable embryos. The male octopus dies almost immediately after copulation and the female follows soon after egg laying. The eggs hatch within a week and use the body as their first source of food. From there, they swim back to shore to find a suitable host. Because of the rapid response needed for effective treatment, any patient complaining of sinus pain or ear pain with a recent history of Atlantic Ocean water swimming should immediately be given an x-ray to rule out a marionette octopus infection. Weird, right? If anyone recognizes anything, definitely let me know. I'd feel better knowing this is just some weird fanfiction. There's like a whole book of this bizarre shit too, so I can post a few more if it might jog anyone's memory. Have you ever been isolated but need a nightlight? I mean really and truly alone. Count your phone as a connection to the outside world for this, because I think even interaction with others online would help you stay sane. I think it would have helped me stay sane. I live in the woods. Maybe just saying the woods gives you an idea of where I am, but I'm just gonna leave it at that. All things considered, it'll be best if you don't find me. I live in the woods, very far away from any other human. I haven't talked to people in years. I haven't used my voice in years. I tried talking to myself a few days ago, just to realize that my vocal cords had atrophied. I barely remember how I'm supposed to sound when I talk, much less do I even have the physical capacity for it. Chopping my own firewood takes less effort than saying my own name. I guess I'm a hermit, by choice. I never liked people, never wanted to be around them, never really cared for the idea of a job or a relationship, or found any meaning in religion. I just like keeping to myself. Sorry, I know this is probably disjointed. I have a lot to say, to type. It's been so long since I've tried to contact someone else. I've forgotten I even had a laptop until I started digging through my attic. Forgot that my parents were paying for Wi-Fi for this place too, because they wanted me to be able to ask for help if I ever hurt myself real bad. They probably think I'm dead. Let me cut to the chase. I don't think I'm going insane. Or I am insane. Or the world has gone insane. Maybe a week ago, maybe 2. I found the carcass of a deer on the edge of the clearing that my house sits on. It's just about 2 acres of clear land, with my house in the middle, and an overgrown path to the dead south that used to lead to civilization. I didn't think much of it. Maybe a bear got it. Or coyotes if they were desperate. Didn't know, didn't care, just ignored it and went on with my life. I shouldn't have done that. I'm a hunter, but I couldn't be bothered enough to care. The garden was producing poorly due to some damned fungus, and I was worried about trying to forage for something. I didn't think much of the fact that it was still fresh, and the eyes were gone, and the antlers were snapped off, and its teeth were pulled. I didn't think much of it, or even notice it, until they were piled up in the front of my doorstep like a grisly gift. Even then I thought it was some sick joke, some lone hunter or drifter trying to freak me out for the sick fun of it. So I just kept on keeping on. Hunt, tend to the garden, enjoy nature, read whatever book I felt like for the 30th time. I think I'm going crazy, because I didn't touch that pile, and it was gone the next morning. Not a drop of blood, a scrap of grizzle, no more deer body on the edge of the property, no tussled leaves where it might have been dragged, just gone, like it wasn't there in the first place. I think I'm going crazy because a few nights ago a hand knocked on my window at dusk, a hand connected to an arm that stretched out of sight like a gnarled tree root, nails like savage claws. Sorry, I think I may have skipped over a few things. Let me go back to. I kept a close eye out after the carcass disappeared. Set a few snares out even though I was lone wire. Did I mention that I made a run to a harness shop every year or so? Just once a year. During spring usually. Never talked to the clerk. I think I looked too raggedy for them to chit-chat with anyway. This was August. My only connection to the world would have missed me for another few months. If they noticed I was gone at all, they wouldn't, I think. But I saw a few snares, and lost all of them. The wire snapped clean in 2, if the trap was still there at all. Not a speck of blood around. I think I'm going crazy because I'm starting to doubt I set those traps at all. Metal doesn't just disappear. They weren't dull wires. They were meant to trap and cut. Even a bear bleeds. A rabbit would be stuck. I think I'm going crazy because I haven't seen a live deer in weeks. No birds, no squirrels, no insects, not even a frog or a newt. I don't remember being annoyed by mosquitoes in the evening, in the dead middle of August, in a near coastal state. I've been living in the middle of nowhere for years. I have no contact with the outside world except for a yearly trip, which I last did in March of 2022. The world can change a lot in 6 months, and I live in the woods very far away from any other human.
I don't know what walks in these woods, because I've seen it in half glances out the corner of my eyes, and in the nightmares I try not to remember. I don't know what it sounds like, because if I did, then I would have to be insane. I hunt and scavenge and garden for food, and nothing's been growing, and I haven't seen a living thing besides the trees and the grass in nearly 2 weeks, and I must be going crazy, because if I'm not, then something really knocked on my door, and the trees must be growing faster than usual, because otherwise those things covering the ground aren't roots and vines, and no one cares if I die, because no one knows I'm here, and the messages from my parents are real, and they never made it here, and... Sorry. I got a bit overwhelmed there. I'm a hermit who's lived in isolation for years. I live in the woods, very far away from other normal people. I must be going crazy, because if I'm not, then something really is barring the door to my house and knocking on the windows. I have to be crazy, because otherwise the world is becoming too real for me to bear. Because otherwise, I don't want to be sane. I have to be crazy. I have to be insane. I have to be mentally ill. Please tell me I'm delusional. Please tell me I have more time than this. Please tell me it won't keep going after I press send on this message. Then there's an end to this if I live long enough to make it to the hunter's shop. Please. Just tell me that it hasn't already overgrown my only path out of here. Which one do you think is mine? By Mace Parks. When I was young, I used to look up at the sky with absolute wonder. I grew up on the family farm, where every night it would light up in a huge array of bright tiny pinpricks piercing through a blanket of darkness. It was amazing. Unfortunately, the older I got, the less I looked up. By the time I was an adult and took over the farm, I hardly looked up at all. I got married and we had 3 kids. My youngest girl, Luna, my middle son, Alex, and my oldest son, Michael. As they got older, we expended our livestock and crops. There were so many things around me that there wasn't much time for appreciating something so consistently there as the night sky. Life on a farm isn't an easy way to live. There's a reason it's the career with one of the highest suicide rates. It's never bothered me though, and I actually enjoyed the intensity of it. I liked living where I made a living. It made me happy that I didn't depend on anything but my own 2 hands to survive. My family and I rarely went to the grocery store. I only went to restaurants on special occasions. We had a simple existence, but we were happy and together. I watched my 2 sons and daughter create so many of the same memories I had. Things were a little different than my childhood. The internet and modern technology made sure of that, but the core of the way we lived never changed. My wife Lene grew up just like I did, so we all had a mutual understanding of what we were doing with our lives. We taught our kids how to work the land, how to take care of the livestock and take care of the buildings and equipment. All 3 had their talents, and all 3 had the skills to do anything that needed to be done. I was proud. I still am. It was a cool autumn night when stars started to streak across the sky. The phenomenon was beautiful. I'd never seen anything like it. The star's light would stretch out in a long white line for about a minute and then disappear completely. And the kids absolutely went wild about it. The oohs and ahs and look, there's another one were consistent. They started counting each one and didn't stop until we forced them kicking and screaming inside for bed. 438 in an hour. After the kids were asleep, Lene and I sat on the porch and talked about how insane it was. The sight of it was awe-inspiring, but the thought of stars falling and burning out sent a deep hollow feeling to the darkest part of me. It was like when you hear terrible news. The more I thought about it, the harder it was to breathe. I held Lene close and assured her everything would be fine, and she assured me of the same. When we decided to turn in for the night, I went to check on the barn. I did all my usual nighttime checks to find everything as it should be. Whatever was happening was above me. There wasn't anything I could do about it. I decided to drive into town the next morning and find out what the consensus was. As I walked back to the house, a stream of the brightest light I'd ever seen hit the house. It knocked the breath out of me and ripped every ounce of thought out of my head. There was only light, the burning, all-encompassing eternal light. I hit the ground and hid my eyes the best I could, but there was no escaping it. All I could do was lay in the dirt in agony.
I lay there for hours, or minutes, or days, or seconds. My head throbbed like the morning after a night of tequila and whiskey. I could barely stand up and keep my balance. Through watery eyes, I called out to Linnea, but all I heard back were two voices screaming from inside the house. Only Michael and Luna called back to me. Stumbling, I ran to the house in a panic. It felt surreal. Two of them met me halfway up the stairs and fell into my arms, wiping their eyes and sobbing. They were just as confused and bewildered as I was. We sat there for hours, weeping into each other's arms. I held out hope Linnea and Alex were taken somewhere wonderful. Maybe they were raptured like the Bible said, but the more I thought about it, the more that pit in my stomach deepened. The next morning, Michael suggested we go to town and see if anyone else had disappeared. I was hesitant, and I was smart enough to know how people react to things they don't understand. If we were the only ones this happened to, we would be blamed. I turned on the TV to see if anyone else was experiencing the same thing as we did. It was happening everywhere. All over the planet, stars streaked down to Earth, enveloping people in light and leaving no trace of them behind. When the sun rose and the stars couldn't be seen anymore, the disappearances stopped, but the happening followed the dark side of the planet. News broadcasts of streams of light from the sky racing people where they stood filled every channel. Panicking had already set in and the rioting started. That's when I turned the TV off. We stayed home that day. We tried to eat, but none of us were hungry. I did the work we had to do to keep the bare essentials going. We had to stay busy. Or maybe I had to. The kids were terrified, and a few times I saw them both wiping a tear away and sniffling, trying not to let anyone else see. I did my best to comfort them, but what could I do? Night was coming, and all three of us knew there was a chance that whatever was happening wouldn't stop. Till the day I die, I'll remember rushing away from them at dinner to throw up. The thought of being taken and leaving them both was too much to bear. There was no one else to take care of them. I couldn't trust anyone I knew, even if they happened to still be alive. I couldn't risk asking someone for help because I couldn't risk someone knowing they were alone. I pulled Michael aside that night after his sister was asleep. He was only 13 at the time, a child in many ways, but mature in so many other. I made him promise he would take care of his sister if something happened to me. I was sure it didn't need to be said, but I had to hear him say it out loud. He needed to know it was a possibility. He said he would, then looked me dead in the eyes and made me promise the same. I could tell he already thought about it. He knew I was struggling, even though I was trying to hide it. I had never been so proud of him. The three of us sat together on the porch as the sun went down a few nights after that. My daughter between my son and me under a huge blanket Linnea made before any of them were ever born. Michael had his little brother's favourite toy tight in his grip. I shook with fear. We all shook together. The sky began to streak above us, stars falling to earth in a brilliant light. The majesty of it was still there, despite the grim reality that each streak meant another disappearance. It struck me how few stars there were. Millions of them were gone. I had never seen so much darkness in the sky in my entire life. We sat there for hours. Before too long, I could feel the rhythmic breathing of sleep from Luna. Michael's eyes began to close and his head bobbed. By midnight, they were both asleep. My mind wandered. I remembered all the happiness of the farm laid out in front of me beneath the backdrop of a falling sky. I miss Linnea and Alex so much it made it hard to breathe. None of us were taken that night, or the next night, or the night after that. Months of the stars streaking out of the sky passed. Every night we waited together, huddled in the blanket watching the world end. Slowly, we went back to the same routine as before. The sky had fewer stars in it every night, but life went back to a relative normal for us. At least as normal as it could have been. I could only assume the world around us was ending, but for what was left of my family, we found a way to keep going. We celebrated Luna's 4th birthday a few months later. I made a cake with the last bit of flour we had, and we celebrated by recounting memories of how things used to be. That night after the kids went to bed, I sat on the porch and prayed that if we were to be taken, we would all go at the same time. If that was impossible, I prayed to be taken last. A month later, my youngest daughter was taken by a blinding light as we all slept huddled together in my bed. Once there was only Michael and I left, things got harder. The sky at night had almost no stars in it. It was so dark that the moon looked out of place. There were maybe 2,000 or 3,000 stars left, nothing compared to the millions that once hung twinkling in the black. It was around that time that we stopped watching the sky every night. Michael hardly talked anymore. We did our work, more than any two people should have to do by themselves. We made the tough decision to slaughter 2 of the cows and freeze the meat. We had to put some of the others down in mercy. There wasn't enough food for all of them, and we couldn't just let them starve. After we called the farm, I could tell something inside of Michael was changing. I could see a vacancy in his eyes. On several occasions, I saw him stop, stare blankly into the sky for a few minutes, and then go back to whatever he was doing. In my hopes of trying to save him, I decided it might be time to head into town. I hoped the change of scenery might bring some part of him back. I hoped there'd be few enough people that we wouldn't be in very much danger, or find a place with decent survivors to take our minds off of what we lost. I thought it might do him good to interact with someone who wasn't me. Michael agreed to take the chance with me. There was still gas in the truck, and there was still enough bullets in the hunting rifles we had to protect ourselves. In the morning we left, just as the sun started to peek over the horizon and the streaks of light became impossible to see. In just a year and a half, the town I grew up going to had been destroyed. The stench of it hit us before we saw rotting bodies lying haphazardly on the street. Windows were smashed in every building and car. The landscaping was overgrown. It was like a scene from the horror movies I watched as a kid. Michael took in the scene with a blank stare. The weight of it hit me, standing on the side of the road surrounded by destruction. My son was gone. He was as gone as the rest of my family. No child should go through what he had. It was too much for him. My heart had been broken many times over, but that moment was one of the worst. I turned from him and hid my face the best I could. It couldn't have done any good for him to see me that way, even if he probably wouldn't have cared. We crept through town, trying to find anything we could bring home. Every drugstore had been ransacked. Every grocery store was empty. There was nothing left for us. After a few hours, we made our way back home. As we crossed the street and headed off through an overgrown field, something hard hit me in the back of the head and I blacked out. I woke up tied to a wooden post back to back with my son. I tried to struggle against the ropes that held us together. I asked Michael if he was loose enough to get free. A flattened no was all he said. I couldn't see him, but I knew he was staring at the sky. The sun was going down, and the streaks would begin again. Around us, there were 20 or so people in ragged clothes with mad hair. They all stood silent, staring up at the sky along with my son. Others were tied to poles, but none of them struggled. Half of the people present were captive, and the other half free, but none of us said a word. The stars began to fall. "Which one do you think is mine?" my son asked softly. His voice was so calm and quiet. A chill ran through me and my mouth went dry. I had no idea what to say. He didn't seem to notice any lack of response. A man tied to a pole 20 feet from us screamed as a beam came down and surrounded him. I closed my eyes as tight as I could, but it didn't help. Nothing could have protected me from how bright it was. My head began to pound just as it had every time I saw it. The man's screams abruptly stopped, just as the light did. The raggedy men who had taken us erupted in wailing and praise as they bowed toward where the man had been. I struggled against the ropes and got a hand free, followed by my other. No one paid me any attention as I got my son free and ran off into the night. Another light came down behind us, followed by screams and praise. Sometimes I still hear them echoing behind me. I decided never to go back to town on the quiet walk home. We went to bed that night together under Linnaeus' blanket. I held him tighter than I'd ever held anything. I quietly wept into him as he slept in my arms. I pleaded for God to take us both. I prayed until my teeth hurt from grinding and my nails dug into the skin of my hands. My mind began to wander, and I started to drift. Blinding light shot through the ceiling and into the bed. Thoughts raced through my brain. Were my prayers being answered? Would we finally be taken from this hell? My head throbbed and my eyes ached. The grip of my son loosened, and my arms slammed into each other. The light stopped. I was alone. I stumbled out of bed and fell to my knees. A sudden influx of thoughts sent my pounding head into a swirl. For the first time since it all began, relief washed over me like a cold shower. I felt lighter than air. My son wouldn't be left alone. Michael wouldn't be left without anyone to help him. I cried so hard my voice began to crack and my eyes burned. I was alone. So alone that the hollowness inside me became comforting. My wife and children weren't in this hellscape we once called modern civilization. The fight was over. There was only one thing left. All I had to do was survive until my star came for me. There was so much peace in that thought. Weeks later I lay alone in the overgrown grass watching the stars streak, and heard my son whisper the words he said when we were tied to the post. I wondered which one of the few hundred stars left was coming for me. By the time the sun came up, all but about 20 had streaked across the sky to leave nothing where they were. I was sure that the next night would be my last, and a twinge of happiness pierced through the deep black inside me. Tomorrow night, my star would come for me, and whatever was next, whatever happened, I would embrace it. The next day I prepared for the end. I tidied up the small graves I made for each of my family members and added my own. I surrounded each one with our favourite things and etched a small testimonial into a wooden slab we had in the barn. If anyone came after us, I wanted them to know that there was a loving family who lived a happy life there. As evening approached, I went into the bathroom to clean up. I took a bath with some water from the well. Months of grime and filth washed out my hair and off of my skin. I shaved and put on my favourite clothes. Whatever happened, I wanted to look my best. If I saw Linnea and our kids after the streak hit me, I would want them to know I was okay and hadn't spent the better part of the last 2 years barely scraping by. I looked in the mirror and found myself impressed. Fingers of orange and yellow stretched across the sky as I made my way downstairs into the porch. I sat in my favourite chair under Linnea's blanket and watched as the streaks became visible in the night. I admired how magnificent the scene was. I had lost everything, but the sight of it was still incredible. By around 1 o'clock, only 4 stars remained. One in the east and one to the south streaked across the sky and went out. The others 2 hung there in silence, surrounded by the complete black around them. One sat almost directly above me, twinkling almost like it was calling out to me. The other one was to the north, close to the horizon. I wondered where its owner was. What had they lost? Who had been taken from them? Were they sitting alone, looking up with me? The star to the north by the horizon streaked across the sky over me, somewhere to the south. For a moment, I thought it was coming for me, and my heart nearly stopped. After it went out, there was only one left. Excitement and adrenaline rushed through me. I started to sweat, and butterflies erupted in my stomach. My whole body shook, and I couldn't help but smile. The star above me streaked out somewhere to the south, far behind me, leaving a void where it once was. The world had never been so dark. Some say it's an urban myth, but I think it's happening to me. By September G.Y. Yeah. Some say it's an urban myth, but I think it's happening to me. Never in my wildest dreams or nightmares would I have ever thought that this could actually happen to me. How could this happen to anyone? When you start to get followed by a person, a stranger that appears everywhere you go, he just smiles at you. It's an uncanny feeling of impending doom. It's that voice in your head screaming at you that something that just isn't quite right. It's the intuition that kicks in and desperately pleads with your brain telling you, you gotta get out of here, man, run, run, run as fast as you can. But what am I even running from? Delusions? Hallucinations? Or something much more real and much more sinister? Everywhere I go, there it is, smiling at me in the corner. Everywhere I look, there it is, smiling at me in the distance. Every time I turn my head, there it is, smiling at me again and again and again. Even when I close my eyes, there it is, burnt into my brain.
spying at me from behind my eyelids. When I go to sleep at night, there it is, smiling at me in my dreams. And it's not always the same person, and I don't even know if it's real anymore. In fact, I'm starting to think it's not real, and it's just a figment of my deranged imagination, or a part of my fucked up subconscious. It was when I was visiting a friend at work that I first noticed it. A woman smiling menacingly at me in the corner of his office. "Who is that?" I texted him from my phone. He looked up from his phone notification and laughed. "What are you talking about?" I was confused, so I took a picture on my phone to send him discreetly, but the photo was empty. Just an office wall with no one standing there. I couldn't believe my eyes. I slapped myself across the face, pinched myself, thinking I was losing the ability to tell what was real and what wasn't. What if I walked over to her and touched her? Would I feel her there? Or would my hand just go through her? I was starting to really lose my cool, couldn't focus on anything but the woman in the corner. And the woman continued to stare, and I swear she was looking right into the depths of my soul, her smile growing more evil with each passing moment. I couldn't stand looking at her, but at the same time I could not look away. It was enchanting almost, like the siren's cry that lures in the sailor, only to devour the soul of the fool foolish enough to be drawn to it. "I need to go," I said before quickly rushing into the parking lot. I had to get out there as fast as I could. I didn't even really know why. I just knew I had to leave. When I reached my car and got into the driver's seat, the woman appeared again from 2 parking spaces over. The same stare, the same smile.
I was hired as a journalist for Pixie Pages. There are some strange rules. Part 1. By Prickly. I think I died today? Top right drawer is your handbook. Read it carefully. I'll send someone for you to shadow. Just wait here, hun, Joe ordered, disappearing into the cubicle labyrinth before I had the chance to speak. The handbook I read was interesting, to say the least. Aside from the standard clothing codes, anti-discrimination policies and the sort, odd rules were sprinkled in. For example, under no circumstances could I agree with a witness. The printer and copier could never be fed magenta, and the shredder needed to be asked before used, then thanked afterwards. The fridge should never be touched. These very strange, very specific rules littered the otherwise unremarkable pamphlet. Since this was my first job out of school, I didn't want to screw myself over by ignoring a single detail. As bizarre as the rules were, I decided to commit to them. Worst case scenario, I'd make a fool out of myself. I'd rather be gullible than ignore the rules. Let's get a move on. Name's Paulie. Nice to meet ya. A soft voice startled me, caused me to jump a little. Josh, I spat, recomposing myself, then offered a hand. Paulie shook mine with an unexpectedly firm grip. Without another word, we rode the elevator to the ground floor. Say nothing. Right? Nothing. Just follow my lead, Paulie instructed. Paulie spoke with such conviction that I struggled to doubt them being anything other than serious. Paulie meant those words. Paulie drove us to the interview site, not saying a word the whole time. We pulled into a gravel driveway, just outside of the only house for nearly 10 miles. The rundown building may have at one point been a majestic mansion. However, all that remained was an overgrown yard, filthy windows, moss-covered walls, and a collapsed garage. Is this the place? I asked incredulously. How can anyone live like that? Hey, shut it, Paulie hissed. You're lucky this one is on the tamer side of things. Keep your mouth closed and follow my lead. I won't keep reminding you. Paulie grit their teeth, glaring into my eyes. With a huff, they stormed out of the vehicle and strolled to the front door. I trailed behind, nearly tripping on the uneven path. I caught myself just as Paulie used the ornate knocker. Metal hit metal with a reverberating clang. At least 3 dogs began incessantly hounding the door. Paulie slightly turned to face me, just enough so I could watch them mouth out, "There are no dogs." My brow furrowed as my doubts grew. This was becoming more and more difficult to believe. Between the insane rules and ridiculous behaviors I'd encountered so far, this had to be a prank. Even so, I played along. The heavy door swung open in a flash, revealing a wildly disproportionate figure within. The unusual frame croaked out, "Aren't they just lovely?" The figure made no attempts to identify what the "they" was, though that didn't stop Paulie. "They're terrible," Paulie countered, softly sighing. "Where are they?" Paulie stated, even though it should have been a question. The figure swayed, twitching occasionally.
They are 398.4 meters south, 832.7 meters east.
A red, slimy tendril licked at the doorframe, slithering back into the house before the figure asked its next question.
That one should live?
A thin coil shot out, quickly constricting me around the waist. I choked out in a shock as the air was forced from my lungs. My arms reflexively grabbed at the slick, eel-like tentacle strangling the life out of me. On the verge of collapse, I barely made out Paulie's words. No, they should not. In a moment of desperation, I begged for my life.
No, I should live!
I heard it before I felt it. Have you ever heard a watermelon splatter after falling? Imagine that, accompanied by juicy meat tearing. Now you have an idea of just what I heard as my torso was separated from my waist. Like a crushed soda can, my lower half crumpled to the ground. My upper half would have followed suit had Paulie not caught me. Although drowning in shock, I could still make out Paulie's words, through the bog of blood loss and excruciating pain. You'll be okay, it'll be okay. Paulie tried to comfort me. Dropping me like a sack of garbage. You're a dumbass. Hopefully now you've learned your lesson. The world faded out. A mercy, as I no longer felt the agony of being in two halves. I embraced the cold nothingness as I ceased to exist. Then I woke up. Welcome back, Josh, Paulie said smugly. Whoa, what, where, huh? I stammered, feeling for a pair of legs that were somehow intact. I felt around, finding nothing unusual. My organs were inside of me, my clothing was as wrinkled as it had been this morning. Not even a bruise, no speck of blood. You undoubtedly have hundreds of questions, but I've only got a handful of answers. First, follow the damn rules. Second, whatever happens to employees is undone at the end of our shift. Third, break too many rules and things will start to stick. Fourth, you do not have a choice but to work. No use running. You'll show up tomorrow and you'll show up the day after that. Fifth, questions are better left unanswered. Paulie unloaded on me, mostly on deaf ears. I was not in a stable state of mind. I sprinted to my car and sped home, and here I am. My first day at Pixie Pages, and I was torn in half. Yet somehow, I'm alive. I can't find anything online about Pixie Pages Inc. Google Maps doesn't show a valid address when I type it in either. I used Google Maps this morning to find my way there. How the hell does it suddenly not exist? I'm certain I died today. I don't want to return tomorrow. Please, save me. Someone. Anyone. 911 won't go through, and I can't bring myself to talk to my family. Whenever I try, bullshit about what a great day I had spews from my mouth. I don't know what I've got myself into, but I'll keep you updated. Wish me luck. I've got to go reread those insane rules. I was hired as a journalist for Pixie Pages. There's some strange rules. Part 2. By Prickly. I think I died again, but oh man was I on fire. True to Paulie's prediction, I found a vacant lot where the office was meant to occupy. Don't get the wrong idea, I had no intentions of a second day. I was speeding down the interstate all night after my post, nearly 3 states over when 8:56 AM rolled over. I blinked once, finding a distinct change in scenery. No longer was I zooming down the freeway, weaving through long-distance truckers and the occasional late-night drivers. Instead, I was lined up in the fleet of employee vehicles, waiting to begin our shifts. White-knuckling the steering wheel, I struggled to process where I sat. I was hundreds of miles away, yet they still somehow brought me here. Young and naive as I may be, I knew that meant I couldn't escape. 9 AM struck and it's hard to describe what exactly I saw. Imagine the opacity slider was slowly pushed from null to full. The translucent skyscraper materialized sluggishly, but certainly over 4 or 5 minutes. 9:04 rolled around. At that instant, swaths of people stampeded through the front doors. I suppose stampede is a strong word. Those who made their way inside did so without any enthusiasm. They maintained a steady and uniform line, patiently entering their personal purgatory without any joy. I could relate to that gloom. I didn't want to work here either. Like them, I had no choice. Luckily, I was given more time to peer through the handbook, nearly 2 full hours before a suit-clad man waved his hand between my face and the papers. Josh, I presume, the man asked. Taking my dumbfounded silence as confirmation, he continued. You'll be shadowing me today, and let me tell ya, it'll be a doozy. Cut the shit. What's going on? I spat, returning to reading.
Swearing is a no-no, Joshy. Let's go. We've got some equipment to recover, the man warned, gesturing towards the elevator.
What do I call you? I finally broke the silence we'd been driving in.
Sean. There shouldn't be a witness there, but try not to use names. Better safe than, dead and all.
Sean just had to bring it up. Recent memories from yesterday resurfaced, sending throbbing pain across my midsection. I rubbed at the worst of the pains, asking, what are we looking for?
A weather balloon. New model, needs to be recovered, yada yada yada. Simple enough, right?
Sean turned an eye to me, reading the inquisitive expression on my face. What's the catch? I finally groaned, after he made it clear that he was waiting.
Glad you asked, Joshy,
Sean shared, grinning in self-satisfaction.
Something took down the balloon. We don't know why.
Sean's tone turned on a dime as he felt deadly serious.
There could be anything waiting for us. Follow the rules and try not to die.
That's easy and all, I said, sarcasm oozing, but how do we handle whatever's waiting for us? Sean narrowed the eye I could see, glaring at me, disappointed.
Joshy.
He grit his teeth, trailing off. Well, I pressed for answers.
Do the rules say anything about safety?
Sean countered, making it my turn to fall silent. After some reflecting, I said, well, no, but Sean cut me off.
Correct. Do your job and follow the rules. Break them. They break you.
His forearms tensed as he gripped the steering wheel with intense force. A gulp caught on a hitch in my throat. So being sent into a deadly situation, for what? I threw my hands up, with the justified amount of drama. For a moment, I saw Sean, the real Sean. The broken, shattered man who'd been beaten into a loyal dog. Sean must have caught me staring as he stomped on the brakes.
What are you looking at?
He bared his teeth at me, taking his eyes off the road. Sean, behind you, I croaked.
Don't change the subject, he tried,
but I cut off. Smoke! There's a fire, look, damn it! I forced his head towards the rapidly growing wildfire, battling as he did his best to resist me.
Get off me!
Sean shouted, elbowing me hard in the ribs. As I fell away, I brought his head down into the center console, producing a satisfying crunch. The center console crumpled around Sean's skull as Sean grunted. Furious, he threw his door open and walked off towards the flames. With an angry huff, he disappeared into the foliage. I rushed after him, confused, but doing my best to track him. It was easy to hear the twigs and leaves crunch with each step he took, but the low-hanging smoke made navigating much worse. The suffocating smog forced me to crawl, losing ground as Sean continued unhindered.
Wait up!
I choked out as loud as I could, coughing as I inhaled smoke. The scratchy breath left my throat raw and sore.
Get up, jackass. There is no fire, remember?
Sean retorted clearly through a crackling fire. I stumbled as I pressed further into the smoke, rendered speechless as I laid eyes on Sean. The psychopath was standing inside of the hellfire. Not just standing, no. Sean was casually strolling through them, straight to the debris.
Hurry up and get over here. The further apart we are, the more likely they are to pick us off.
Sean sighed, shaking his head. My lungs burnt too viciously to do anything but choke. Sean turned to me and sneered.
Get your ass in gear. Something's coming. Accept it. The fire is not real.
A charcoal-coated beast lunged out at Sean. The well-dressed man was almost like water as he contorted himself to the side. He danced like the flames as two more hellhounds made their attacks, colliding over his head as he ducked. Had I not been suffocating, the scene might have been more entertaining. Sean moved with practiced grace, dipping and dodging the three demon dogs. Even as red snakes shot out like frog tongues, not a single one landed. Too caught with the flaming man dancing between the hellspawn, I yelped at the unexpected contact on my leg. I lurched backwards, then upwards, as my leg was pulled into the air. I grabbed at the ground, praying to catch a root or a low branch, but nothing came. I was left suspended in the air, until I came face to face with it. The scaly purple devil mask shone brilliantly through the thickening haze. His blackened lips maintained a firm crease as it grinned wildly. Two beady black marbles gleamed with life as it read the terror on my face. We made eye contact for a minute, though I gleaned nothing from its featureless eyes. With a twinkle in its eyes, smoke began pouring from its mouth, and it slammed me through a tree. Not into it, but through a fully grown maple tree. That purple masked devil used me like a damn axe. An untold amount of time later, I woke up from my near coma. I felt nothing but indescribable agony across my right side. My arm was drooping in a deformed lump, shattered beyond repair. I couldn't be sure of it, but my bets were that my hip was dislocated. For reference, dislocating a hip is no easy task. That devil mask-wearing bastard swung me with force comparable to a car accident. To be fair, I did feel like I'd been hit by a truck. On my left arm, I tried pushing myself upright, only for my lungs to scream in excruciating pain. Several daggers had turned my organs into pincushions, and I had just opened the wounds wider. I heaved for air, unable to catch my breath. I fell into a coughing fit, spraying blood out of my mouth. Each cough felt like knives stabbing me again and again, drawing tears from my eyes. My last thoughts in that moment weren't that that was the end. My last thoughts in that moment were dreading waking up, perfectly healthy. As you can tell by me posting this update, wake up I did. Sean made sure to break my nose with a solid open palm punch before heading home. A couple minutes later, I trudged to my own car, stuffing my nostrils with tissues to stop the bleeding. I typed this up, and now I'm gonna go try and memorize more rules. I'm worried though. I forgot to clock out today. I was hired as a journalist for Pixie Pages. There are some strange rules. Part 3, by Prickly. For the first time, I didn't die today. I woke up feeling worse than any hangover from my college days. My throat dry and sandpapery left me nearly voiceless. It seems that I wasn't fully recovered from the day prior. Wasting no time to run, I blinked. In a flash, I was sitting beside the lineup of workers, 8:56 AM on my dash. Strangely, a gym bag lay on the passenger seat, a note tied to the strap. The note read, "Pick up any offerings. Do not consume them, follow the rules." In addition, a series of addresses were scrawled like a grocery list, numbered with checkboxes and everything. "What's this?" I slapped the paper on Joe's desk, a look of bewilderment on both of our faces. After a couple of seconds of scanning over it, Joe snorted, "Grocery list. You know what to do, boy. You got a bag to fill, nah?" She spoke so damn condescendingly, as though explaining addition to a 5-year-old. I was inclined to flip her off, but chose peace. I took the sheet back, then turned and walked back to my car. Gravel crackled as my wheels rolled over the poorly maintained road. The unpaved path had a dead-end sign, half buried under spray-painted graffiti. "Your destination is right ahead," Map stated, confirming my location. The neighborhood was pretty homely. Bright, lively grass filled the yards. Well-maintained houses lined the street with uniform space between them. Some even had the stereotypical white picket fence. The unnerving part, well, one of them, was the fact that this neighborhood existed. I had driven through dark alleys, run-down Husker abandoned brick buildings, and at least 2 burnt-down lots. Yet in the heart of the ruins, here I was, cruising through an immaculate community. The stark and abrupt transition was like oil on water. A clear line was drawn in the sand, where nothingness became something. The cul-de-sac rounded off with a colonial-style graveyard. It was almost as though the property was cut straight from an exhibit from colonial times. In the center of the graveyard, atop a hill of dead grass, a modern 2-story log cabin sat. The dirt path that led to it seemed rarely used, but not overgrown. I pulled up to the black, pointy fence and parked my car. I pushed through the front gate, which creaked on rusted hinges. My hair stood on end as I strode through the winding dirt path. I kept scanning for an arm or a leg to jump out and snag me, all the way until I made it to the front porch. I held my breath as each step groaned in protest under my weight, and as each plant nearly buckled as I approached the front door. Before I had the chance to knock, the door slid open. A wrinkled old face wore a 3-2 smile, as the ancient woman croaked out welcome.
"Dearie me, a guest?"
"No, ma'am, I'm with the Pixie Pages." I started feeling uneasy. The lady looked like a bona fide witch.
"Pity. I prepared so many sweets for the children."
The witch spoke with a deathly chill. "I could take some off your hands." I fought back from gagging, seeing 13 fingers wrapped around the door. 13 fingers drummed the door. The second from the top had 5 fully articulating joints. One went the wrong direction.
"That would be lovely,"
the witch cheered, clapping with unseen hands. The fingers continued drumming on the door. The decrepit woman slinked back into her house. I swear I could hear multiple muffled cries, as though screaming through a mouth gag. At least 5 voices wailed from beneath the house, from what had to be the basement. Seconds ticked by, then minutes. The fingers remained on the door, drumming slower than they had been. Suddenly, they drummed much more rapidly, then clenched into a fist so tight the wooden door splintered. The door swung open fully, the wicked woman grinning more hideously than anything I'd ever seen. I instinctively took a step back, nearly slipping down the steps.
"Harry dearie,"
the witch spoke with glee, hurling a glass tray of alien casserole straight into my chest. Somehow staying intact, I managed to catch the dish. This left my hands occupied, unable to catch the railing. I fell backwards, protecting the food as I slammed into the dirt. The witch cackled from her home, then cackled some more. She kept on cackling as the door inched itself shut. The whole time I retreated to my car, the witch's cackling echoed in my ear. Thank God the moment I crossed the threshold, escaping the haunted property, the laughter ceased. I placed the foil-covered casserole on my back seat, then buckled it in as best as I could. Through the glass, I swear I could see an eyeball pressed against it. It wasn't just suspended either, it was vibrating. It kept creating bubbles in the swamp-like slop. I shuddered, but ultimately decided to get back on the road. 2 hours later, I arrived at my next destination. The school was set behind in the centre of the suburbs. It was quarantined by yellow police tape. Red stains lined the otherwise unremarkable building, as though coated with a massive smoothie. Luckily, I wasn't forced to go inside. Instead, a familiar man stood, a bald child violently sobbing at his side. Sean tapped the girl on the shoulder, then pointed to me. The girl sniffled, wiped her face, then wiped again with the tissue Sean produced from his sleeve? I don't know, man. Sean is full of surprises. Together, the two dragged the tank mounted machine to my trunk. Sean then walked back, disappearing into the building, reappearing 10 or so minutes later with a wastebasket.
"This is Cassie. Would you please see her to her home? She's had a rough day, and you owe me for getting you this,"
Sean ordered, shoving the bin in my face. The liquid contents inside sloshed around, chunks squelching as they hit the walls. The rancid stench of bile filled my nostrils and stung my eyes, daring me to vomit.
"Don't complain, and I'll give you an air freshener,"
Sean proposed, raising one eyebrow as a challenge. I steeled myself, clenching my fist to calm down. Needless to say, I had pine tree combating the putrid odor that sat on the floor in my back seat. The bald girl was nearly catatonic as we drove. She suddenly got up from her car, then trudged up her driveway, collapsing through the front door as soon as it opened. Seconds later, Sean pulled up behind me, speeding to the girl's aid and talking to her horrified parents. I wanted to do something to help. I really did. But I hadn't the slightest clue how. And my phone rang.
"Josh,"
Joe hissed.
"get back on the road,"
she ordered, promptly hanging up. I bit my lip, contemplating what to do. With a heavy heart, I put the car in gear and continued on. When I returned to the office, I popped the trunk. The tank thing burst out, landing on its side with a heavy clang. In a robotic, constant tone, it droned the word, "Help, help, help." A few unfamiliar people exited the front doors, flipping the tank upright. I patiently watched, unsure of what to do.
"Where ya?"
Joe spat, having snuck up behind me. I nearly jumped on my skin, turning to face her.
"What?" "The materials. Where are they?"
Back seat? I shrugged, confused by her choice of words. In response, Joe pointed to my rear seat. 2 men and a woman retrieved the foul items from where they sat, all recoiling at the tear-jerking stench. One man and the woman carried the bin inside, each using one hand to cover their nose. The other man carried the maceable casserole inside. The three disappeared without another word.
"You can call it for a day,"
Joe stated bitterly. Not willing to risk the opportunity, I said nothing. I went inside, punched out, and returned home. Thankfully, the odor vanished as soon as I entered my car. I regret leaving those people with the witch. I regret doing nothing for that little girl. Tonight was the time to drink. So here I am, drinking my problems away. I can barely make out my keyboard through my swirling vision. If anyone can advise me how to help him, I'm open to ideas. I still can't bring myself to speak this out loud. It's almost like my tongue isn't mine anymore.